I wanted to just talk a little bit about Korach, the third rebellion, because it's such it's a rebellion, it's an argument, it's a fight that seemingly doesn't make a lot of sense, right? What doesn't make a lot of sense? Because Korach had a machlokas with Moshe, right? Korach comes to Moshe. Everyone knows the famous stories that Chazal tell us. Korach goes to Moshe and says, Moshe, we're sitting here at a beautiful Beis Medrash, and we have all these sidurim on the wall that say Shema over and over and over again. Do I still need a mezuzah on the door? And Moshe says, yes, of course. And Korach says, Moshe, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. Doesn't make any sense. And then he challenges him on tzitzis. He says, if I have an entire beged, an entire piece of clothing that is filled with chelas, with the blue dye, do I still need it on the tzitzis? And Moshe says, yes. He says, Moshe, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. And, of course, you know what happens. The ground opens up and he gets swallowed up, and that's how it gets resolved. But what's so interesting about this machlokas is, for those of us sitting here in the Beis Medrash, you open up any Gemara, and that's what you find all over the Gemara. Fighting. It's like a battle royale, back and forth, bringing rayas, asking questions. We are a people that by nature are inquisitive. We push, we fight to understand, to get the point. What did Korach do that was really so wrong? And I think to understand this, a person has to understand that there are two approaches to arguing. I know Naz Daly was here, did a whole beautiful video with the whole concept of machlokas. The way the Gemara works, and the way it works for all of you sitting here, is that when you start, you argue, you bring proofs. But the most important point is, you don't necessarily know where you're going to wind up. In the Gemara, when they argue, they don't know the end. They haven't read the last page of a book like so many of us do. That is called intellectual honesty. You want to find the truth. It's all about finding the truth. And we're going to fight and argue, and it's not going to get emotional because it's all about finding the truth. There's a second approach. The second approach is intellectual dishonesty. I decide where I want to wind up, and then I go back and try and work it out to get there. I decide that I want to take halacha in a direction where perhaps it doesn't belong, and therefore I go out and I try and figure out exactly how to make it match what I want it to match. There's a beautiful Rabbi Wasserman. Rabbi Wasserman was probably one of the greatest gedolim to perish in the Holocaust. And what makes his story so special is that he was in America when World War II broke out. He was in New York raising money for his yeshiva in Branovich. And the Jews of New York begged Rabbi Wasserman to stay in America. Don't go back. And he said, I cannot leave my Talmidim alone. And he went back and he was killed by the Nazis. Rabbi Wasserman is a beautiful mimer. He makes the following point. We say in Shema, Lo sasuru achar levavchem v'achar einechem. Right? Einechem, you should look at things that aren't great for your soul. What does it mean not to follow your heart? The Chazal say it means minus. It means philosophy. There's certain Greek philosophies, other philosophies that are totally antithetical to Torah and to truth. You shouldn't follow those philosophies. Rabbi Wasserman asked the following question. Shouldn't it have said, Lo sasu acharei roshchem, acharei moach, your head, your mind, right? Philosophy, you don't think of your heart when you're thinking philosophy, right? You think of philosophy as something, as a very intellectual pursuit. Why would it be lo sasu acharei levavchem? Why would it tell me not to follow my heart towards false philosophies? So Rabbi Wasserman says beautifully. He said, when you go back to these philosophers, many of these prominent philosophers, it wasn't that they pursued a certain philosophy and understood the world that way. It was that their heart wanted to do certain things. I wanted to live a life a certain way. I wanted to live a life that perhaps was not moral, that wasn't ethical. I wanted to do things that potentially may hurt other people. But no one wants to just be a bad guy. So I'll create a philosophy to allow me to do what my heart wants to do. That's the problem. That's what Elchanan Wasserman says. And that's exactly what Korach did. This wasn't about a halachic discussion. Korach felt he should be the head of Klal Yisrael. Now that Moshe did all the hard lifting, now that Moshe got us out of Egypt, now that Moshe got us there, now that Moshe did all the work, I'd like to take over. So I'll try and embarrass Moshe with these halachic arguments to get what my heart wants, to be in charge. That is not the way a Jew views the world. We have a tagline at Aish. You may have seen it starting to go up. I actually have a bracelet here. I'm not a bracelet guy. Bradley made one for one of our events, has our tagline on it. We have a new tagline here in Aish, which we use now around the world on all those social media. Think Jewish, live inspired. What does that mean? It sounds very flippant. It's a tagline. It's, it's very deep. What does it mean to think Jewish? Why did the Rosh Hashiva come up with this concept that we have to get 3 million Jews to study Torah, to study Jewish wisdom? 20% of world Jewish population. Why? Torah's a nice thing, but what does it do? It's so much bigger than just that piece of Torah. Thinking Jewish means that I view the world through this prism of Torah. Torah teaches me how to think. Torah teaches me how to view the world. Torah teaches me how to view every situation in a moral or ethical way. Whenever you talk to people out there about the concept of Lashon Hara, it doesn't exist except for us, because everything we do has to be holy. And the world is so upset by that they try and trip us up and accuse us of not being moral and ethical, accuse our army of doing terrible things, even though the truth is exactly the opposite. We need to get 3 million Jews to think Jewish, to use the Torah as that way to view the world. And what is the reward for being able to view the world in that way? Is to live an inspired life. The quality of your life, the quality of your family, your interactions with everyone around you, they're going to be elevated. The way you view life, you see Akash Baruch Hu's hand in your life. You don't quite get as frustrated because you understand that he's guiding you to a certain point. All of us have had things thrown at us in life. And it's hard in the moment to understand how this is going to get me to where I need to get to. Unless I have emunah bitachon. Unless I've sat and learned Torah, so that the emunah bitachon, the faith, permeates my whole being. When I took over Aish, there were many, many challenges in front of us. Some of them were financial, structural, strategic. There were lots of things that we had to do to take Aish to the next level, to build on the shoulders of Reb Noach, who was such a giant. And I had to do various things, work out various things. And there was one of the Rabbanim who here in the yeshiva who came to sit in my office one day. And I'll never forget this conversation for the rest of my life. He sat in my office, and at that point, people would come and get a little annoyed at me. I was doing this, I do that, whatever it was, They didn't know me so well. I've been here 9 years now, so people know me a little better. He sat down, he said, when you did this thing, I was really angry at you. I was really angry at you. How could you do this, that? But I spoke to my wife. My wife said, maybe he has a good reason. So I started to look into it. And I realized, Taka, you're right, that this was an issue. And I realized that even though on the outside it may look a little painful, it was something that we needed to do. And I was so taken by his intellectual honesty, by that ability to not go with your gut. We all have a gut. We see something and we just want to know what it is. Aish has always been built, or Noah built this institution to search for the truth, to search for the truth of Torah, to search for the truth of humanity. It's much bigger than this building. But this is how we train. And the way to train ourselves is through Talmud Torah. There is no other way to take your heart and your mind and join it and to understand how to look at the world. And so we live in a world, in your generation, you're going to leave the base measure at some point, you're going to go out there. The world is insane today. Crazy. The lies that are being spread online about us, the things that are being said, crazy. But we have to know that we have the truth. We have to understand that we are moral, that we have ethics, that we have Torah, that we are representing the Almighty down here. We can never, ever, ever get thrown off by that. And if we can go out and get the Jews around the world to join us, and that's the brilliance of the Rosh Hashiva's plan, to go after 20% of the Jews, to just get them to learn Torah. Put Shabbos aside, put Kasha aside. There's a journey they'll take. But it has to start up here. They have to be able to see the world and understand that there's so much more out there to see. There's so much more out there to understand. If we can do this, and we could choose the derech of Moshe, and not the derech of Korach, then we will bring the Jewish people back to Hashem. We'll bring them back home, and ultimately we'll be able to build the base of Mikdash across the street. Thank you.